coastal waters. As defined in state statute, the Conservation Commission is an official body of the town of Greenwich that has as its purpose the development, conservation, supervision, and regulation of natural resources, including water resources, within its territorial limits. Accordingly, the Conservation Commission must keep an index of all open space areas, publicly and privately owned, and conduct research into the utilization of and possible utilization of land areas within the municipality. It may inventory natural resources, formulate watershed management plans, drought management plans, and in addition, the Commission and staff serve as an advisory capacity to all town departments, including the newly formed Harbor Management Commission, on natural and cultural resources. Long Island Sound is the most significant natural resource in our town, and as such, the Conservation Commission and staff work on numerous projects to protect and preserve this important resource. The Commission often serves as the primary agency for coastal resources and has ongoing projects to enhance and restore tidal wetlands, protect and enhance coastal habitat, including the management of a diadromous fishway and a management of one of the largest heron rookeries on Long Island Sound. The Commission is actively working on developing a coastal resiliency plan for Greenwich and was the lead town agency in the development of watershed management plans for the Byram and Mianus River. In summary, the Conservation and staff have a vital interest in the development of any vision adopted by the town relating to our coastal resources. The Commission recognizes the Plan of Conservation and Development as the planning document for the town, as per state statute, and that the Harbor Management Plan is one of many that supports the POCD. Indeed, Section 8-23E2 of the Connecticut General Statute states, for any municipality that is contiguous to Long Island Sound, such a plan, referring to the POCD, shall be A, consistent with the Municipal Coastal Program requirements, Sections 22A 101 to 22A 104 inclusive, made with reasonable consideration for the restoration and protection of ecosystem and habitat of Long Island Sound, and designed to reduce hypoxia, pathogens, toxic contaminants, floatable debris in Long Island Sound. As presented, the draft Harbor Management Plan generally provides a good overview of the town's harbor management areas and associated coastal resources. However, it falls short when discussing environmental concerns other than water quality related to stormwater management. The plan also identifies all of the various agencies and departments that have a responsibility for protecting this precious resource. It does not, however, adequately define nor recognize the primary roles of the various agencies in the protection of our coastal resources. This creates a tension in the Harbor Management Plan as to the exact role of the newly formed Harbor Management Commission in relationship to other agencies. Section 22A-113N of the Connecticut General Statute, which deals with the content of the plan, clearly focuses on the navigational responsibilities of the Harbor Management Commission. It is acknowledged that the plan may include other resource concerns. However, given the vast resource concerns in our coastal waters, such as sea level rise, habitat loss, invasive species, fisheries management, debris management, harvesting of horseshoe crabs, it is important to acknowledge that the plan does not begin to be a coastal resource inventory or a comprehensive management plan. The plan also falls short when discussing water quality concerns, primarily focusing mainly on watershed issues and ignoring basic best management practices associated with boating. The plan should be promoting the Connecticut Clean Marina program and serve as an advocate for adequate pumping stations. The plan does not discuss any of the environmental concerns directly related to boating, including the use of defouling agents, proper disposal of fishing lines, etc. In addition, the plan assumes that the Harbor Management Commission will be the primary authority for everything in the plan. Planning and zoning is responsible for the development and implementation of the Plan of Conservation and Development, but that does not mean that P&Z is the primary department responsible for everything in the POCD. The Commission believes that the plan needs to clearly identify the primary responsibilities of all the town agencies that impact the Greenwich Harbor areas, including the Conservation Commission as referenced in the plan. The Commission has strongly expressed its position that the plan and the Harbor Management Commission should have a primary focus on navigation, boating, and docks and moorings, and become a very strong document that provides guidance to Connecticut DEP when issuing dock permits. As presented, the document does not provide any additional guidance. The argument has been made that this is broad to give latitude, but anyone in the regulatory world will tell you that without specific guidance that is applied consistently across the board, this will fall short of its potential to protect Greenwich's coastal waters, which was the Conservation Commission's main reason, which is why the Conservation Commission supported the formation of the harbor management plan in the first place. I will be providing language in my detailed comments to that hopefully will address this issue, and basically looking at exactly some of the issues that the Conservation Commission has run into dealing with DEP and the docks, and we're providing some detailed language in that regard. In closing, the Commission is supportive of a harbor management plan that provides for the safe and beneficial use of our coastal waters in an environmentally sustainable manner and supports the protection, enhancement, and restoration of all coastal resources. Clearly defines the roles of the Harbor Management Commission as primarily relating to navigation, boating, docks, and moorings, and recognizes that water quality and other natural resource concerns referenced in the plan primarily fall under the jurisdiction of other town agencies, and that the role of the Harbor Management Commission is to support these efforts. Recognizes the POCD as the planning document for the town as per state statute. Provides clear guidance to Connecticut DEP on the installation of docks, and recognizes and reinforces that not only may the Harbor Management Commission provide comments to other town agencies on impact to the harbor, but the Harbor Management Commission will also seek comments on its activities, dredging, moorings, etc., from other agents with primary responsibilities for the resource being impacted, thereby reinforcing the role of all town agencies in the implementation of the plan. And as I indicated before, land use agencies have been provided detailed digital copy, and we will be providing you detailed comments on exact sections and wording in the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. Peter Alexander. Why not?
Have you seen this before? Have you seen this before?
I am Peter Alexander, a landscape architect in Greenwich for a while, since I was a couple of weeks old. I want to thank Ms. Savageau for her presentation. It saved quite a bit of time for what I was going to say, and I'm glad we don't have 3 minutes, but maybe I can keep mine to 3 minutes again.
You can take all the time you want, Peter.
Now, this is the second of 4 hearings, is that correct, by the state statute?
Second
Yeah.
of
There's no
one-
statute, we can do as we need.
Oh, I think you had to have 4 public input sessions, no?
No.
Oh, that's the way I read it, okay. Well, going back to the state statutes and the regulations and so forth, as a landscape architect, I feel I've let my community down as well as my profession has, because we think of plans in different ways, not just a series of regulations, which this document that you have so far really addresses. Its regulations, 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 instead of actual real planning. I just started to read the addendum. I appreciate that one of the first things you did is give the harbor master enough acknowledgement that you spelled his name right. I also want to just big picture and then small picture. The big picture is 50% of the United States population within 50 miles of the coast. Guess how much the population of Greenwich lives within 50 miles of the coast, all of it. We are a coastal community, and what I passed out to you includes what the Long Island Sound watershed is. Starts up at the Connecticut River. I'm the 14th generation. We had 13 generations up on the Connecticut River in Northfield, Mass, and married into and were pals with some of the settlers who came before us. But the concept of planning, I think, really needs to be addressed. That the, I'm sorry, Peggy, did I? What did I say? She was my favorite babysitter when I was a kid. The state and federal and all those regulations are necessary in probably a lot of atmospheres, but I think what we really need is to look at our town, its unique geography, including the size of our coast. As you can see by that, the map about Long Island Sound that I gave you, we have an amazing length of coast compared to the size of the town. But because we have 4 resistant metamorphic ridges that funnel from a wider area to a smaller area, we get a lot of runoff quickly into Long Island Sound. I think that the management of that and the harbor should start at the top of the watersheds, not where the moorings are. One of the plans that seems to be drawn on with your plan is, for instance, Fairfield. They have 100 moorings. We have 800 or so. The town Fairfield owns all their moorings. So it's a very different dynamic. I think what we really need to look at and think about is leadership again. The town of Greenwich has had an amazing impact on our country and boating and yachting, sailing. A lot of Indian Harbor guys have won a lot of races. My Belhaven buddies haven't broken the books too often, but we've done okay. I think that when I was the head of the Friends of Greenwich Point back in the late 80s, I tried to introduce to all the regulators here in town the idea of silt traps, especially at Binney Park. So I think we have a really good chance to lead again by not making this just a regulatory menu, but a real plan for our community. We've done some pretty good things as citizens here, started the Boys Club, revived the Olympics, founded the 10th Mountain Division. I'm particularly in favor of the same guy that did a couple of those things to get ski patrol going for the first time. And I think we have a chance to lead here. I think rather than concentrating on regulations, we should concentrate on our physical environment, absolutely positively know that the long-term costs, both from fun and money, should be, if we manage our rivers, if we manage our streams at a small level, neighborhoods, subwater, we're also going to be managing the harbor, so we don't have to be threatened by millions and millions of dollars repeating itself to dredge and dredge again. There's also a real change that's coming into Connecticut. Briefly, I was very encouraged by a meeting I was at in Hartford earlier this week that to use the dredge spoil to enhance the protection, not only for storm, but also our environment by increasing the numbers of salt marshes as per acre and cubic feet that can be very, very, very productive for everyone, including us. We have a chance to go for it. I think that your efforts here have been focused, and I would like to get you guys back up to about, if not 20,000 feet, at least 10 or 12,000 feet to look at the bigger picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Katie DeLuca?
Thanks.
Got two.
Oh, sorry, I printed out 10. I can give you this one when you're done. Good evening, my name is Katie DeLuca, and I'm the Director of Planning and Zoning. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to speak on the plan this evening. Clearly, a tremendous amount of work has gone into this, and I commend you for that effort. Most importantly, I look forward to working with you and building on this draft to create what I think can and will be a plan that will serve the town well. As you know, the 277-page draft plan was distributed in late August with a request for a 2 to 3 week turnaround. And at that time, we had sent a joint letter from Planning and Zoning, Wetlands and Conservation, Shellfish and Parks and Rec to you, stating that there just wasn't enough time for us to give it the attention that I think it deserved. So we requested more time. And then myself and the Director of Conservation, who you just heard from, Denise, and Pat Sesto, the Director of Wetlands, provided a draft letter, which is dated October 6th. That's the second attachment there. That outlined 6 major concerns that we believed warrant major reconsideration before this plan could be supported by us on its journey to adoption, starting, of course, with the Board of Selectmen and ending with the representative town meeting. So the abridged version of those 6 major concerns are as follows. As written, we will miss critical opportunities to guide the use of our harbors due to the lack of detail. The plan states facts about the harbor areas and the coastal resources, but there is insufficient information for the reader to draw a conclusion of whether current conditions are good, bad, or otherwise. The absence of qualitative information and unambiguous goals in the harbor management plan will make it difficult for other agencies to determine which proposals that come before them are consistent or inconsistent with the document. Given the overarching role of the Plan of Conservation and Development for the town, it is inappropriate to characterize the Harbor Management Plan as an equal partner to the POCD. Number 3, the jurisdiction of the Harbor Management Commission is defined as being below mean high water, but the Harbor Management Plan takes on issues above this limit and sometimes well away from the coast. The harbor area, the Greenwich Harbors area chapter lacks critical descriptions of the harbors. There is not enough definitive information presented regarding issues and needs for moorings, boat slips, competing uses, desired uses, public access, and water-based business, clubs, etc., and whether those features should be preserved, expanded, or discouraged. Chapters 4, 5, and 6 seem to be restating very similar information, and it's not clear why that redundancy is necessary. Chapter 7, in such a way as to give the impression the various entities represented are being charged with tasks. It is unlikely these entities will proactively seek out the plan. For example, it is not the RTM's responsibility to adopt the harbor management plan. Rather, the RTM has the authority to adopt the plan, and it is the Commission's responsibility to bring the plan before them for consideration. So I understand the October 6th memo was distributed to the full Commission at your last meeting, but as I said, I've given you copies here so that you can see in greater detail what some of these general concerns are. We asked to meet with Mr. Mazza, the chairman, and Mr. Stedman, consultant, and that meeting took place a few weeks ago. The comments back to us were that you wanted something concrete to look at in terms of detailed edits because there was a disagreement with some of these more philosophical comments. And to that end, Mr. Stedman did provide us with the digital copy of the plan, and I've spent considerable amount of time going through the plan and providing edits, and I will provide you with that digital copy of those edits tomorrow. So what I want to do this evening is tell you about what I've done in those edits, which was to concentrate on those 6 major concerns. And my comments this evening are really on two main points. The first point is the overall philosophy of the plan, and the second is on the organization of the plan. The introduction in Chapter 1 covers the philosophy of the plan and sets the tone. And after reading the plan and talking to those affected, I do feel that there is agreement regarding these fundamental questions, such as what is the purpose of a harbor management plan? What issue are we trying to solve? How does this plan add value to the community? And how does this plan tie into the existing framework of our current town government? I understand and agree with the premise of the plan, which is, of course, to manage the harbors. It is stated on page 1-2 that, quote, "The plan is distinct from the Greenwich Plan of Conservation and Development, which sets the town's land use policies and also calls for protection of coastal resources. The plan and the POCD are consistent and complementary documents, the town's two principal plans for land use, for land and water use and conservation," end quote. To liken the harbor management plan to the POCD, I believe, is procedurally incorrect. The phrasing of those two sentences implies a relationship that is not contemplated and or supported in the language of the charter, including Title IX, Sections 92 through 98, which authorizes the Planning and Zoning Commission to prepare, adopt, or amend a comprehensive plan that serves to guide the town as a whole regarding our goals and decisions for land use, housing, and transportation, etc., and Chapter 7A of the Charter that authorizes you, the Harbor Management Commission, to prepare, maintain, and implement a harbor management plan. There is no discussion of establishing or correlating a relationship between the two in either the Charter or the state statutes. So having said that, please don't misunderstand my comments. The reason the POCD talked about creating a harbor management plan in the first place was to establish and create, quote, "The best opportunity for Greenwich to manage areas and uses is through the development and adoption of a harbor management plan pursuant to the State Harbor Management Act." The establishment of a harbor management plan can serve effectively as an advocacy tool for Greenwich with the Army Corps of Engineers for maintenance of dredging projects. Greenwich Point, Coscup Harbor, and the Byram River all need to be dredged, and funds should be secured to implement a schedule for such dredging, end quote. So how should the harbors be managed? Where does the jurisdiction of planning end and the jurisdiction of this Harbor Management Commission start? I understand the harbor management plan could be thought of as a waterside application of more traditional land use planning theories and techniques. Such a plan becomes, in effect, a map for the use and management of harbor lands and waters under its jurisdiction. I agree that regulatory control mechanisms such as zoning generally stop at the mean high water mark, or more specifically now the coastal jurisdiction line, which is elevation 5.5. Of the reasons it was identified in the Plan of Conservation and Development to establish a harbor management plan was to address this shortcoming. So again, what is the purpose of the plan? What are we trying to solve? What is the added value, and how does that plan tie into the existing framework of the town? Let's talk about jurisdiction. Section 7A-3 of the charters define the jurisdiction as being, of the Harbor Management Commission, as being within and over all navigable waters as defined in the statutes, Connecticut Statutes 15-3A, and intertidal areas below the mean high water line of the shoreline in Greenwich and within the territorial limits of the town. So generally areas below mean high water. Section 7A-4 defines the Harbor Management Commission powers, duties, and responsibilities as those where you should review and make recommendations on issues coming within the harbor management's jurisdiction arising from any proposal affecting the real property on, in, or contiguous to the harbor. So above mean high water in some areas, but contiguous to the harbor. The plan takes on issues above this limit and sometimes well away from the coast. The stage gets set on page 2-8 with a statement that, I won't read the whole thing, but this is the section that talks about coastal resources and tributaries and major watersheds, and then it states, I quote, "There is a fundamental relationship among all of these tributaries, watersheds, and the Greenwich Harbor and the Sound. For example, stormwater runoff from the watersheds eventually enters the harbor and sound, affecting the quality of surface waters. It is agreed that upland decisions can and do affect coastal waters, and many of the goals in Chapter 5 talk about supporting agencies with jurisdiction. However, Goal 7.4.3 states that the Harbor Management Commission may review for consistency with the Harbor Management Plan and transmit comments and recommendations to the appropriate town agencies concerning, number one, all development proposals subject to the municipal process of coastal site plan review and located on parcels contiguous to or otherwise affecting the harbor. That statement would appear to exceed the jurisdiction granted to the Harbor Management Commission by the RTM. These issues need to be ironed out. It is a disservice to the citizens of the town to require review before different boards when said boards do not have very clear and concise standards and objectives. What happens if one board approves something and the other denies it? This actually happened just last year with a major development project in town that landed the town in a long and contentious legal battle. The point is, the problem is very real, and defending the concept of trying to be a catch-all so that the unknown can be addressed would not appear to be a legally sound approach. The jurisdictional issues bleed into procedural issues. For example, if a property contiguous to the water wants to develop a marina and a boat service operation, currently the Planning and Zoning Commission sends that application to the Department of Public Works for review of water quantity and velocity issues, to the Conservation Department for water quality issues, and to the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection for determination of consistency with state statutes. As it relates specifically to the Harbor Management Commission, I fail to understand, based on the stated goals, what your role would be as it relates to water quality and how and when and under what circumstance you would want to review a project. The most useful goal to answer this question is Goal 3.3.5 that states, all new development generating significant stormwater discharges directly or indirectly into the harbor should employ appropriate stormwater treatment systems and technology, including filters and swirl-type grit chambers where necessary, to reduce the potential for non-point source pollution to enter the harbor. All such systems and technology should be properly maintained and operated in accordance with regularly scheduled maintenance procedures, and all accumulated residue should be properly disposed of. I do believe the Harbor Management Commission has a role to play in water quality, but the users of the plan and those subject to it need to have predictability and transparency. So while the above goal is laudable, is it consistent with the town drainage manual? Does it supersede or contradict the manual? What if DPW thought an appropriate stormwater treatment system was a rain garden, but the Harbor Management Commission thought it was a Coltec with a grit chamber? Without having established clear processes, procedures, and standards for each board to review a proposal against, the legal costs to the town could be astronomical. So in keeping with Section 7A-8 of the Charter that deals with the coordination of the Harbor Management Commission with other municipal agencies, boards, and commissions, you had agreed graciously to meet with all the applicable agencies to discuss these issues. We were going to do that at your last meeting. And now, after that, having spoken with John Goucher, who's from the Office of Long Island Sound Program, he told me today he intends to get you comments shortly in November. With Amy Siebert, the Commissioner of Public Works, and of course you heard from Susie Baker at your last meeting from the Shellfish Commission. You're hearing tonight from myself and Denise Savageau, and I know Pat Sesto has additional comments from wetlands that she's planning to submit. So I would ask again that I think we're all saying the same thing, so we'd like to set up a meeting with you to discuss some of these jurisdiction and process issues so that the value added from adopting a harbor management plan is on point. You may not have enough time to digest all these public comments by November 12th, but I will certainly make myself available at that date if you would like to have a discussion then.
Can I make a comment?
Why don't you let her finish?
Oh, I'm sorry. what'd you
Sorry,
say?
you said no time limit, so I took that.
No, it's no time limit.
I'll make it quick. The second point I want to cover is the organization of the plan. I have read every page of the plan, starting on page 1 and ending on page 277. And Mr. Steadman, you write absolutely beautifully, and I enjoyed reading it, the whole thing. However, it wasn't until I read through the entire plan that all of the components of the plan made sense to me. And I suspect this will not be conducive to helping the users of the plan find information they need quickly. I've taken the liberty, per your suggestion, to make edits to the plan that I do hope you will consider. These are the digital comments that I'm going to be providing you. And these include, but are not limited to, the following. The stated goals in Chapter 1 were reconciled with the stated goals in Chapter 4 and 5. There's some discrepancies there. The description of the harbors in Chapter 2 was moved to Chapter 6, and the redundancy was eliminated. I suggest that Chapter 3 be made an appendix. Chapters 4 and 5, I think, are the crux of the plan. And I combined those chapters so that one can look to one place for a stated goal, followed by the related objectives, policies on how to meet said goal. Chapter 6 was culled. Chapter 7 was culled. With respect to the procedural issues in Chapter 7, I call your attention to page 7-11 that discusses the Harbor Management Commission, quote, may review coastal site plans. I'll just note that in fiscal year 13-14, a total of 173 coastal site plans and 9 coastal subdivisions were reviewed. The commission reviewed 40 of them and staff reviewed the remainder. So how is this going to work? What should be reviewed and by whom, and how is that going to work when there's no staff? Does an applicant go before the Harbor Management Commission, or is this an administrative function of the commission? What staff is contemplated to be able to handle this workload? It's a significant workload. Obviously, handling it through the department now, I can speak to that personally. So, in conclusion, I do want to commend you, for all of you, for taking on this very difficult task. I think you're off to a fantastic start, and there are many sections that I think are extremely, extremely well done. And I sincerely hope that my comments are taken as constructive. And as I said, I'll provide you the digital copy tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you. Okay. Peter?
Hello, yeah. I'm Peter Quigley. I think just a comment to Denise and to Katie DeLuca, and even to inland wetlands. Some of you know I've been involved with RTM and land use issues. I have over the last, I'd say 16 months, in fact, in planning and zoning to the chair, Mr. Heller, I think Katie can substantiate this, have pleaded to have representation of these town departments at our subcommittee meeting as we've been drafting this plan. So I would suggest we welcome the comments. We are trying to make this. The operational words are complementary to you all and collaborative. We don't have the expertise. You do. We understand that. However, the state statute indicates a Harbor Management Commission is supposed to deal with coastal site applications. And I've been in some of those coastal site applications, you may recall, you may not, on my own, listening to them, and hearing, in some cases, the planning and zoning asking for some input from the Harbor Commission, or they wish they had somebody that could make comment on it. So it's commentary, we're advisory and we make recommendations, but we don't make any decisions at all. And clearly, I look at this as a complementary and collaborative effort, and only ask that you come out as we're drafting the plan to provide these suggestions, rather that as we get to the end of the line, now I can potentially spend more time redrafting what are some very good comments here. I'm making excellent notes here. I'm making notes. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Jury tie?
Frank, I'd like to make a comment. Gary Silverberg over here.
Excuse me.
One of the areas that harbor management has to deal with is the Coastal Management Act. And from that standpoint, yes, we will be seeing coastal site plans to review them. I can tell you that without proper input from the Harbor Management Commission, it's difficult for the Planning and Zoning Commission to approve or deny some of those plans. If the Planning and Zoning Commission decides to override a recommendation from the Coastal Management Commission, Harbor Management Commission rather, they need a super majority to do that. But I would point to Stamford and what is going on right now, and Mr. Stedman, who has been to many meetings over there, and I've observed it. The Harbor Management Commission over there has a plan review committee that does go over those things. We, as a commission, have the right to hire a consultant to help us to review a lot of that, where we don't have the expertise to look at everything. And I will tell you that Stamford is in a real big problem at the moment because of things that a developer has done along the coastline there. And I won't get into any more detail than that, but I'm sure you know about it. So I think that there is a role to play on the upland side. Thank you.
Jury tie.
Good evening, Jerry Ty, Fleet Captain, Old Greenwich Yacht Club. First off, thank you very much for all your efforts on the commission for what you've worked on for the harbor management plan. Generally, my comments are about moorings. I manage the moorings, or manage with the moorings at the Greenwich Cove. Starting off, we appreciate all the efforts that the harbor master has put forth on cleaning the old moorings, made it more safe and more usable. We very much appreciate that. It's been a vast improvement in our mooring field. Specifically, on the mooring permits, Chapter 5, page 534, paragraph 7.6, it would be helpful if we had a very clear process of what it takes to obtain a mooring. I'm usually the one that gets asked what we do, how we do it. There's a $75 fee and then another $75 fee, which is a little confusing, and it'd be helpful if on an amendment or wherever it is, it's listed out where it goes and what we've done with this money, that type of thing would be
I
helpful.
think you will find that there will be another set of regulations written that are in the process of being written now that will involve moorings and the operation of the mooring system. It's really in a draft stage now and hasn't gone much beyond some of the commission members.
Okay, that would be great. If it is in draft, one of the pieces, could we put enforcement for using the process properly, putting the mooring where it's supposed to go? There's frequently moorings that are in the wrong place, up against other boats. There doesn't seem to be enforcement or funds to enforce the removal of the moorings, that type of thing. So an enforcement clause would be helpful there. Finally, on one of the guest moorings, page 726, the document talks about the town will provide guest moorings, maintain the tackle and the equipment, et cetera. But I've maintained the guest moorings over at the field. The harbor master is very helpful for this, but it's which ones are going to be guest moorings of the clubs, which ones are going to be by the town, and where will the money come from the town to get the moorings, et cetera. That would be helpful. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rob Catalano. No, I guess he's gone. Okay, Michael Finkbinder.
Good evening. My name is Michael Finkbeiner. I'm a land surveyor and hydrographic surveyor. I've been doing regulatory mappings in the town of Greenwich since 1975. Appreciate the work that has gone into this and the opportunity that you're giving us to comment at this time. I'd like to address the overall subject of regulatory framework. I'm certainly not a constitutional law scholar, but I think I can give it to you in a couple sentences. In the week after July 4th, 1776, the states took possession of all of the king's assets, including the harbor bottoms and the surface waters, and they delegated ownership and control to the states. And in general, all rights were delegated to the states except rights that were specifically taken by the federal government or delegated by the states to lesser authorities. So if we take something like the Clean Water Act from the Nixon administration, that is overseen by EPA, but delegated to the states, and then the states are authorized to appoint agents, for example, within town government. So in the Town of Greenwich organization, we have one agency. And that agency acts as the agent for the state in the Clean Water Act administration. And that agency is the Inland Wetlands and Watercourse Agency. Everybody else is a commission. And as such, you're able to create a regulatory framework as commissioners. But how does that fit in the overall framework? Well, from the get-go, you have all pretty much taken the attitude that the special acts give you special powers, and the order of conformance to federal and state law on the assumption that you can pass regulations that somehow modify this regulatory framework above you. But what's going to happen is that as this plan is approved by the state and by the Army Corps and by other higher power interests, all of the authority that the selectmen might have had under the special acts is going to disappear. And there will be no special act powers after the adoption of this set of regulations that's a part of your commission. So I'd like to point out to you the extent to which in your discussion of the environmental, or rather the administrative framework of this, this would be in section 4-9 or chapter 4, you have 76 points of, let's call them issues or planning considerations. And under administrative and coordination issues, to say a key harbor management consideration involves how to effectively blend and apply the special act authority of the town's Board of Selectmen with the Harbor Management Authority under the general statutes. My comment is wrong. You have to accept the federal and state framework that has been handed to you and see where in your management of the waters, not of the waters of Greenwich, but of the waters of the state of Connecticut that are within the municipal boundaries of the town of Greenwich, you can become more restrictive, but not less restrictive than the regulatory framework above you. Now, to address comments made by Mrs. DeLuca on the subject of the limits of your management, for several years now, a number of us, including Mr. Quigley, have urged the regulatory and land use functions of the town to look at the water system as a whole, starting at the top of the watershed. And in the town of Greenwich, that would be Converse Lake and parts of the Byram River in New York State, and to recognize that these waters are connected all the way to the harbor. However, I specifically pointed out to the Flood and Erosion Control Board that they are failing to regulate erosion of soil that takes place waterside of the inland wetland permit administration function that is the true agency in the town for the Clean Water Act. And a response of a member of that board was, oh, you're confused. Erosion is a water quality issue, and we don't deal with water quality. Well, my friends, I'm here to tell you that the Flood and Erosion Control Board should have been dealing with erosion since the hurricane of 1955 that established the need for such a board. And our harbors are a testimony to the failure of the town to properly control what reaches the harbor. So let's just take the subject of PCBs. We know we have PCBs at the high school. We know they're being moved or pumped from under the cofferdam of Mesa. Well, where do those PCBs go? They either go into stormwater and they end up in the harbors of Greenwich, or they go into the sanitary sewer system and end up in Greenwich Harbor. Well, these molecules are pretty much indestructible, so who's responsible for the movement of PCBs into the high school and now the export, possibly through our water transport systems, back into Greenwich Harbor? Well, I can guarantee you that Mrs. DeLuca is not prepared to give very much authority to your board in the overall regulatory framework to deal directly with that. But when we compare ourselves to New York, the coastal zone management committees do have a regulatory overview of any failures that reach the high tide line. So that if there is water reaching Greenwich harbors that does not conform to the standards established under the Clean Water Act, whose responsibility is it to do something to correct the situation? And I leave that question hanging in the air. And the last point I wish to address, again, to parallel comments made by Mrs. DeLuca, is the need for specificity, particularly with regard, again, to jurisdictional limits. Now, I have been speaking to you for over a year and a half on the subject of Greenwich boundaries, that is the boundary of the municipal waters of Greenwich. I've pointed out to you why I think your mapping is incorrect. I gave a research paper that has been drawn into the litigation over the subject of who has authority for the moorings easterly of Old Greenwich. That paper is being used by the Attorney General, will be a factor in the resolution of the litigation, but I think it's your business to define, not redefine, but to rediscover the fact that the town meeting in the 1800s adopted a very specific approach to establishing the jurisdictional limits between both Portchester, New York State, and the city of Stamford, or town of Stamford at the time. Unfortunately, a fire in the land records in Stamford wiped out many of the records on the Stamford side. So I'm sure Mr. Stedman can help fill you in on some of the ambiguities that might exist on the Stamford side. But we have had issues regarding the removal of moorings that are immediately adjacent to the property of waterfront owners in Old Greenwich. They have described a mooring as a property right. So I hope that this commission will certainly focus on the matter of riparian and littoral rights and how they are to extend into the waters of Greenwich, or as it may be, the waters of Stamford, with coordination. And I compliment you that you, in your 76 points of concern, give a nod to the subject of getting the boundaries straightened out, but you don't provide a pathway to do so. And I'd like to, again, reflect other comments made that you are going to need a professional staff. The matter of keeping track of what happens in the harbor waters, how moorings get picked up and moved, how obstructions get created or resolved, is all something that requires more than the services of a single person who may be appointed by the state, but is nevertheless working on a budget of about $500 per year. And I think that you've established for yourself a budget limited by your view of how much you could charge for the 800 moorings we have in town, but we have extensive other resources in the harbors that could certainly be the subject of your collecting revenue, one of which would be the fact that the public trust doctrine is very much impacted by somebody putting a piling or a dock or a float in the water, and yet what fee is extracted for the use of the public's right to the surface waters once that commitment or dedication of the land space for piles and floats and other structures has been made. So I see that as a major source of revenue. We have seaplanes that land in the town of Greenwich. Is there a landing fee extracted? We have boats that are hundreds of feet in length that anchor here for days at a time. Do they pay a fee for the right to take up the surface waters of the public trust while they park in a circle that extends far beyond the actual length of the boat? And I know that this evening is not about mooring regulations, but your meeting next week is to discuss the comments you've gotten on mooring regulations. And I am one of the people that have looked at that, and your schedule of moorings with regard to anchors and weights and chains can be applied to the 90 acres of moorings in Greenwich Cove. And I have done that and come to the conclusion that the typical mooring radius, including the length of the boat, is about 94 feet in the waters of the cove, whereas your regulations call for a radius that would be closer to 130 feet. And even though that sounds like maybe the difference between a 2-inch pipe and a 3-inch pipe, a 3-inch pipe carries twice the water of a 2-inch pipe, and a 4-inch pipe carries twice the water of a 3-inch pipe. So when we start looking at how you fit these circles of mooring swing radius with boat lengths together, I come to the conclusion that you're going to have to expand that to 120 feet, which means that Greenwich Cove is 100% overmoored under your regulatory structure at the present time. And you raised the question at a prior meeting, well, is there some bill of damages that is being generated by this closeness? Well, the harbor master gave me a repair bill for $12,000 claimed by somebody else. Damage supposedly caused by my boat because it was moored too close to the other person's boat. So I want to inject that, yes, There is a problem in the cove. It's overmoored.
We really shouldn't be
Okay.
into mooring regulations tonight. That's for an issue for another time.
I'll see you
Okay.
next week then.
Okay, thank you. Sue Baker?
My name is Sue Baker, and I'm the liaison from the Conservation Commission to the Harbor Management Commission. And I was just going to point out a couple of things quickly. Gary, it was great that you alluded to Stamford and all of that's done, but it's important to note that Stamford has neither a Conservation Commission nor a Shellfish Commission. Their things are handled far differently. And then finally, someone commented, why now, at this late date, all of this input? And if I recall, at one of the very first meetings, all of the land use and the Shellfish Commission had been invited to address everybody. And at the time, Roger Bowden spoke for Shellfish, and Denise Savageau spoke for Conservation. Planning and Zoning was represented, and Michael Chambers spoke for Inland Wetlands. And that was hopefully a time for everyone to be aware of what each committee or board or commission in the town does. At the time that Lyle's subcommittee was created to produce a plan, not one of those persons was invited to participate and to be sure that their own bailiwicks were covered. And I think maybe that is part of the problem. It didn't matter whether they were staff or whether they were the volunteer head of the commission. And so now here we are at this late time with none of them having felt included or invited or even welcomed to participate. And so I think that's important. The main thing I really wanted to talk to you about is docks. And it seems to me in the town of Greenwich, if docks were ever to be addressed as an important issue, it should come in the harbor management plan. There should be great specificity. Time was when docks were under some jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. In recent years, and it was said that that would be lost unless the town had a harbor management plan. So in recent years, all dock permitting has been done by what is now the DEEP. And I think all of you know Brian Thompson, who's head of permitting, is so overwhelmed with only 2 people in staff, Sonia and Dave Blatt. And it has been absolutely impossible by their own admission to do field work on any regular basis, and particularly to do really make real observations about what would the impacts be. And those were the things that were looked at before. What is the impact of a dock if it's too big, if it's in navigable waters, if it is going to really stress a very sensitive habitat like a small cove, and what is the negative impact on neighbors if everyone just is permitted to do docks? So now the word comes down that, oh yeah, all the docks in Greenwich are going to be permitted because you can't say no because you can't get there and you can't prove anything. And if you have a dock, it's going to enhance the value of your property and you'll pay more taxes and the state will get more and it will keep more of the engineers who build docks in more money, and on. That's pretty much we hear. And there's no one to pay attention to whether or not it's a good issue. So I would really hope, and this is my only comment, that this harbor management plan will absolutely help the town of Greenwich regulate and have serious say into the permitting of docks.
Thank you. That's the last name I have on my list. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Swigert, and I've looked over the harbor management plan as put forth on the website, and I just have some technical points. Going to your chapter 2.9.5, you state that the aquaculture activities in the Greenwich Harbor area are regulated exclusively by the DEEP and the Bureau of Aquaculture and things like that. But you also say that the proposals for such activities should be reviewed for consistency with the harbor management plan. You don't really explain exactly what you mean by that statement. What is consistent with the harbor management plan if the aquaculture department is basically regulating all aspects of aquaculture? So that's just one comment there. Secondly, 2.9.6, this is just a very technical point. You say that the natural shellfish grounds are delineated by the Superior Court of Fairfield County. That's incorrect. It's Superior Court for the Judicial District of Fairfield or Stamford, Norwalk, or wherever we are here. So that's just that's just something for your legal people to deal with. My next
Swigert,
comment.
Are you
Excuse
supplying
me?
us with written commentary so we can check this, what you just said?
Sure, I can do that. I need to know where to direct it. Very
To
good.
the Selectman's Office, 101 Field Point Road,
All right.
You can email it.
right here.
At 5.6, you have a section on littoral rights. And it says in the second sentence there, such rights should be exercised in a reasonable manner without substantial impairment of the public's rights and interests for the use and conservation of coastal resources in the public trust area. But it also needs to have a little bit more direction that littoral rights are also under the purview of state laws and regulations. This is not just a local management at all. This is a highly regulated area, and you need to put that in there so that people know where to look. And also, just as a technical observation, you have on the mooring stuff. This is this is a different document, so it probably doesn't relate to what we're talking about today. You're not talking about the regulations for mooring and anchoring vessels. That's not on the
Not
document
tonight,
today.
no.
Well, that's just it. I'm just looking over this as a helpful document. Obviously, a lot of time and effort and work has gone into it, and I also support the comments that have been made by the other committee members here from the different commissions regarding jurisdictional issues and different management things. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, you wanted to ask me?
Carolyn, since we're going to be meeting on the mooring regulations and the draft coming up, if you have some comments on those, could you send them along now as well so we could? Yeah, great, thanks.
Do we have anybody else who would like to speak? If not, we thank you all for coming, and thank you for the input. We will look forward to get more information from the land use agencies. And with that, I'd like to have a motion to adjourn.